On today's episode of You Asked, what are the most important specs to consider when buying a TV? Big screen TV or projector for your vacation home? And was I wrong about OLED being the highest mainstream standard for TV performance? Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This is You Asked, the show where we answer your tech questions. If you've got something you want to know, send your question to youasked@digitaltrends.com. And don't forget to tune in every Sunday at 7:45 a.m. Pacific to see if your question has been selected for the show. The first question comes from Pete, who asks, what are the most important specs to consider when buying a TV? Well, Pete, I'd say there are a few, but the first thing to consider is where you're placing the TV in your home. Is it in a living room, a bedroom, dedicated theater style area, workout room? I won't go down the rabbit hole on each one of those, but let's assume it's a living room. Depending on if you've got a lot of big windows around that will add a lot of light during daytime watching, I'd say brightness and the panel type are both important specs to start with. Starting with the latter, if you don't have a lot of ambient light or you can control the light in the room well, I'd consider OLED if you've got the budget for it. It's going to give you the best picture quality in terms of contrast and HDR viewing, and a lot of the newer models do get bright enough to battle added light in the room as well. Now, if there is a lot of light that's going to be pumping into the viewing space, you don't want your TV to struggle to compete with it. The simple answer in this case would be to go with a mini LED TV, and fortunately, most of the ones we talk about on this channel get plenty bright. If you've got the budget, Sony's Bravia 9 is a top-notch option. Samsung and their QN90 series are also great performers, and TCL and Hisense have a number of more budget-friendly options that can still compete with some of the more expensive models. What those TVs I listed also have in common is their backlight technology, mini LED with full array local dimming. And this is another spec to consider for the best viewing experience. These TVs will have much better contrast and be the best performers when it comes to HDR viewing. It's not quite OLED levels, but they are getting very, very good with improved contrast these days. Mini LED TVs are also pretty fairly priced. So if you're serious about a purchase, it would be the bare minimum I'd look at in terms of tech. Operating system is another feature that I wouldn't say is a deal breaker, but it shouldn't be something you don't understand or don't enjoy using, since you're going to be using it every day with the TV. To be honest, most of them are pretty fine in my book. Google TV is probably the easiest to use with Sony, Hisense, and TCL TVs, but Samsung's Tizen and LG's WebOS aren't difficult to learn. They all make it pretty easy for users to find what they need. All of them are finding ways to get more ads in front of us, but I don't find them too obnoxious, especially on Tizen. I would say Fire TV from Amazon and on Panasonic TVs is the only operating system I'm not really a big fan of. Amazon is just a bit pushy with those ads sometimes, but as always, if you don't like the operating system, just pick up your streaming box of choice like an Apple TV 4K or Google Chromecast, and you can easily work around it. Speaking of which, inputs are also important, especially for gamers. For those latest gen consoles and PC gaming, you're going to want at least one HDMI 2.1 port to get the most out of the console output and maximize what I'd assume is the faster refresh rate on the TV, like 120 Hz or faster. And certainly if you have more than one console or know you'll be connecting a streaming box and external audio devices as well, just know what you're working with in terms of HDMI capability so there aren't any surprises when you start setting things up. The last thing I'd say goes on my most important spec list is size. I can see you rolling your eyes because of course you should consider size, but seriously, you want the TV to fit in your space well. If it's too small, you'll know right away and feel it with the empty wall space around it. If it's too big, it may dominate your room and just be too much if you aren't sitting back far enough from the TV. Now, some of you might also say sound is an important spec, and I do agree with that. Certainly do your research there if you're going to rely on the TV speakers. I think a lot of mid to top tier models do have good enough sound, and many are starting to take their speakers more seriously. But I'm just team soundbar these days, especially when you can find good ones for as little as $100, maybe even a little less. They'll add clarity and an experience that most standard TV speakers just won't compete with. The next question comes from Dennis, who says, I have a short-term vacation rental and one of the rooms is set up as a theater. Currently, it uses a 75-inch Samsung LED TV. I'd like to upgrade and go bigger. My question is, do I stick with a TV and go with something along the lines of a 100-inch Hisense QLED or 98-inch TCL QLED? My other option is going with a screen and projector. What are the biggest differences, pluses and minuses of each option? One thing to keep in mind, how easy will it be for guests to use? Hey Dennis, starting with the last part first, I just assume most guests have not used a screen and projector setup, and what I know is a lot of people don't like change or having to learn new things on vacation. So if it's a screen and projector, while it sounds awesome on a list of amenities, I just don't know if it's going to be used that much. Again, just my opinion. An extra large Hisense or TCL TV, on the other hand, is going to be a bit more guest friendly. Plus, it's a huge TV that a lot of people probably haven't used. So the experience will be right up there with a large screen and projector. Now, I'm also not super experienced with projectors. I've just used a few of the smaller ones that we've had around here, but a few things that are noticeably better on TVs versus projectors in general: brightness, contrast, and color. Even if the projector is going in a theater setup in a darker room, the TV will produce better picture quality. But again, my main reasoning for being Team TV is just ease of use and setup. TVs are pretty plug and play and won't require guests pinging you and asking how to use the projector. Drew has our last question today, and it's a call out to a topic we hit in episode 97 of You Asked. I answered a question about TVs and speakers being potentially so good that they've surpassed what the human eyes and ears can perceive. Drew says, solid overview, quick question though. You're crowning OLED as the peak of TV tech, highlighting some refinements still to come to match the limits of human vision. But is that title based on actual superiority or just what's attainable and widely available right now? Because last I checked, the real king is micro LED. It's just living in a castle most of us can't afford to visit yet. Drew, you are exactly right, which is why I said in that video, in terms of mainstream affordable TVs, I'd say that the current bar for best looking is set at OLED. Keywords, mainstream and affordable, because yeah, micro LED is insanely expensive. According to microledinfo.com, the 163-inch micro LED TV released by Hisense in China cost the equivalent of $110,000. At least at one point, I know Hisense planned on releasing a 136-inch micro LED TV here in the United States as well. And when you think of the tariffs on that thing, you just kind of gotta laugh to keep from crying. That's a down payment on a house. Anyway, seeing a micro LED TV like that in person was an experience. Incredibly bright, incredibly sharp, and noticeably more clear than OLED. So we haven't quite hit that peak yet. So when it does come down from the castle and can be manufactured in more reasonable, consumer-friendly prices and sizes, it will sit atop the TV mantle and give everyone that can produce one a new standard to chase. That's it for this week. Keep those questions coming, and big shout out to Drew for following up on one of my favorites from the last few months. I love to think outside the TV box a bit. Drop this video a like, share it with a friend, check out some of our previous You Asked episodes to see if those can answer your questions as well, and of course, be sure to subscribe for more. We'll see you next time.